It's a ham radio.
The Cadillac of ham radios.
Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Ham Radio at Stranger Things podcast. We've got a great episode for you today as usual, but first, we have a little housekeeping to take care of, and I'm going to turn it over to Jasmin to let you know where you can find us on social media and where you can listen to the podcast.
Thanks, Ashley. You can find us on Instagram at Ham Radio Media, all one word, on Twitter at HamThrow, on YouTube at Ham Radio Media, or using our handle Ham Radio 1983. We also have a Discord you can join, which is linked in the description of this episode. If you have a fan theory or question you want to share, you can email us at hamradiomedia@gmail.com. Ashley also has a fanfic on AO3 entitled Stranger Things College, which is also linked in the description. The podcast is available on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and much more. If you like the show, please consider leaving us a rating or review. We have a lot of totally tubular stuff coming up, so be sure to follow us on social media to keep up with the podcast and all of our new content. Same. And I think that's something that's so great about the costuming and the set design. I think I've pointed stuff out too, like the poster on, I think that the calendar, the poster behind Nancy in the scene at the pool party. Like, there's so many little things where you're like, this could be a coincidence or it could be 100% intentional. Like, I lean towards intentional because having watched, so I clicked on something and wound up following one of the crew members on the show, like on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how Instagram will like then suggest things to you?
Yes. Yeah.
So as a result, like it's figured out, the algorithm has figured out, is I like looking at like posts by crew members of shows I like.
I love that.
Yeah, it will suggest other things. So in my feed, after the season 4 came out, there's always posts about Sarah Hansgill, that's, the head hair designer, of different members of the crew and the set department.
Mm-hmm.
And there's such amazing posts. But I lean towards intentional just because, seeing those people
Nothing of theirs seemed to be intentional or accidental because, not only that, but the show takes place in the 80s. You kind of have to have attention to detail, right? Like the scene where Robin comes in and says, "You have a Tom Cruise poster." None of that is an accident. And if that's not an accident, I don't think anything else is accident. The music box with the ballerina, how many times have they referenced Nancy possibly being a ballerina when she was younger? In season 1, she's wearing the necklace with the little ballerina shoes. They hint to it a lot. She opens the box with the shoes and they lean into that constantly. I feel like nothing in that room would have been an accident in any way, shape, or form.
No, I agree. And like other comments they've made, like how the fact that Elle's shoebox is made from Reeboks because Joyce always wears Reeboks.
Yeah, she does.
Like stuff like that. Like the fact that if they put that much attention to detail, I fully believe that they're like, yes, the shoes are going to match, and we're gonna, you know what I mean? Like I 100%, and that all the set design and
Eleven's wristband, the hairband that Hopper got from is not an accident, if that's not an accident. And they are very careful to make sure that they, have those similar things going on with just about everything. There's tiny little nods everywhere.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And also something I loved about season 4 was, my friends and I both said this, we're like, I don't think that's a replica. I think that's actually the thing from season 1, or season 2, like the Michael Myers mask. I'm like, I think that's actually, like, we're looking and we're like,
sure it is. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I feel like they just preserved everything in storage and pulled it back out.
Yeah.
Because, and I was like,
amazing, because that means that they're taking into consideration, we might use this again. We could use this again. This could come up. And they're keeping that universe centered in itself. It was hilarious when they brought back that mask. I did not expect it.
I know, it was so funny.
I was literally laughed out loud the second he comes out from behind the corner. Everyone in my family, this is definitely the difference between myself and my family. None of them understood the reference. And I had to explain to them. No, Max in season 2, when she showed up and scared the shit out of them on Halloween, she was wearing that mask. And they were like, oh, like they had long since forgotten. But it's amazing that it shows that the Duffers didn't forget, the writers didn't forget. They didn't forget at all. It's been sitting there and they know that they have it and they used it, and it's amazing.
Yeah, no, I love that. There were so many little callbacks and small things that I just loved. And um yeah, and just the attention to detail. Like the show looks so incredible, like literally looks to the eye so incredible, I think, because the crew
Yeah.
obviously put such attention to detail with the set dressings, the items they either source or create, the
What
hair, the clothing,
characters wear what
makeup.
shoes, you know?
Yeah.
Their watches. And Steve's watch from season 1 and 2 is the same watch, and now his watch from season 3 and 4 are the same. It does make me wonder if he's going to have a new watch. He was kind of pulled into the upside down, so that
Yeah.
might not be working as intended anymore.
Yeah, no, 100%. So yeah, I lean towards either completely intentional or happy accident that happened once that we decided to continue with, like Steve's hair. You know
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
like that was a joke originally, and then
And now he's Steve the Hair Harrington, and it's like an ongoing thing.
yeah, and I love that about the crew that they like from the stories I've heard, they tried a bunch of stuff as a joke in season 1. And then they ran the tapes back and Duffers were like, well, this is fantastic. We need to stick with this. And like so they made more work for themselves, but it's happy work because it's like this
Yeah.
looks great.
And clearly they have their mindset in very specific ways, like the reference to Steve being swim. I think he said he was swim co-captain,
Yeah.
and he was a lifeguard for 3 years. He was supposed to be on the swim team in season 1. That's why Joe Keery was in such great shape. He was anticipating, having to be in a Speedo and be able to pull it off and look good. He absolutely would have. My goodness. But I love that they still must have had that in their background and utilized that in a throwaway line that, I mean, it's technically not a throwaway line because he literally jumps into the water and goes swimming. But he says it in passing, and any casual viewer would have no idea that that was something that was planned from the start.
Yeah. And I remember after that came out, someone dug up an old interview where he actually talks about that.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, it happened a few years ago. I love that too. So I like that they're pulling things like they've outright said, like there's stuff from earlier seasons, particularly I know season 2, but clearly stuff from season 1 as well, where they wanted to address it and they either ran out of time or like they couldn't get the pool, they couldn't get this, whatever happened. And then now that they have the budget, the time to do it, they're coming back to that stuff. And I love that.
Yeah, the 2 guns that Nancy has, the Russian Makarov and the revolver, you both know where she got both of those guns and she still has them. I love that. It's something like that. We're 4 seasons in and she's referencing a gun she got from season 1 and a gun she got from season 3. And you can literally take that item and pinpoint where she got it. That's something that I love and respect that in a show.
Yeah, me too. And I also love in the final draft that again, difference in the script, like that scene, she originally says Russian Malkov and Lonnie Byer's gun, but when they cut that, she just says a revolver. And I'm like, yeah, I like that they I think the first draft, from what I can tell, had all this extra information in it. And then when they got to filming it, they were like, our audience is smart. They don't need this. They know where the gun's from. So
not only that, but she also wouldn't have said Lonnie Byers. You would never say that way at all.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
But I like too that something I noticed.
Really, I need to read the script. That sounds awesome.
That's the I think it's chapter 7, the Masquerade Hawk is Live, I believe is the one.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think Deadline had it. Anyway, it's the only official script outside of Montauk that I think we have. But yeah, no, I mean, it's like over 100 pages. We're still working our way through it. But yeah, it's good, and it's a good point of comparison. So my take on it is the script has a lot of extra description and lines, which some of which were eventually cut either for time or because they filmed it well, this isn't necessary. But it clearly gave the actors what they needed.
Yeah, more context and stuff.
More context. And something I just think is funny, before we get back to Stancy, is that so they talked about how this season was more grown up. The kids aren't kids anymore; they're teenagers now. So something that I hadn't thought about how that would be reflected physically in a script, but in the descriptions, not only is there swearing in the characters' dialogue, but there's lines like there's a shit ton of these bats. There's a fuck ton of these bats in there. Like every other line is like, there's a shit ton of this, there's a fuck ton of that, which you can't do when your actors are 10.
Yeah. I love
and I love that too. The fact that they like acknowledge just straight up going to the season when they gave them the actors those scripts. They're like, we're all adults here. You know, like let's lean into that. Let's not baby anyone. And there was no babying whatsoever. They're like, there's a fuck ton of these things. And like the script highlights where there's sexual tension. There's all this extra dialogue, and
yeah.
And I love that because
it's the sexual tension for me.
Yes,
my goodness.
Yes. But yeah, it's clearly to my mind. Obviously, stuff gets cut up on the cutting room floor, but to my mind, it's clearly there to give the actors the feel and the vibe, and to acknowledge, like, let's have some fun with this. Like, let's not pretend you don't swear. Let's have some fun with this, and let's lean into it.
Yeah,
which I think. Yeah, me too. It's a smart decision. It's a good decision. And because I've definitely seen shows where the actors got older and they tried to still do the younger kid stuff, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, they like keep the gloves on, and it's like, you don't need to do that. They're all grown up.
And I love that they took the gloves off, and they were very deliberate about it. They're like, yeah, we're doing this. And it fit, and it worked really well.
Great. I love that.
Yeah, and a lot of improv, and yeah, no, I just I love that. So we're doing a whole series on that. So if you're interested in that, we're doing a whole series on that.
Totally. Always
one
interested.
episode of. But yeah, getting back to Stancy specifically, we touched on this, so I know your answer. And I also have very strong feelings about this, and this is one of those ones where it's like people have other opinions on this, and I don't understand why. One, because Natalia Dyer has outright addressed this.
Yeah.
And second of all, I just don't see how you could see it any other way. Do you think Nancy cheated on Steve with Jonathan, or do you consider their fight after the Halloween party to be a break or a break up?
Definitely not a break. Definitely not a breakup. She cheated on him. That is it. End of question. Like, there's no hesitation in my mind whatsoever. Boys and girls in high school, teenagers that are dating, that is not how a relationship ends. Not by any, I mean, maybe that is how a relationship ends when you're 5 or 6 years old. Sure. He broke your yellow crayon, and so screw him. I don't like him anymore. They have been in a relationship for over a year. I think it's 9 months. Not over a year, but they're getting there. It's
I think
serious.
Combined it's a year and a half, but I think it's almost a year at that point.
Yeah. He's driving her to school. He probably has everything about her daily routine memorized at this point. That is not how you break up. That is an argument that ends with both sides being hurt, and both sides need to take some time away to handle it. Clearly, Steve took the time away to handle it, and he's going to handle it because he knows that he needs to apologize. He hasn't been the best boyfriend in this moment. He hasn't been the worst by any stretch of the imagination, but he hasn't been the best, and he's ready to apologize. Even though he's sitting there saying, what am I apologizing for? He gets it. He's still kind of frustrated at it, but he's going to bite the bullet because he knows that he wants to make it work. Because that's how a relationship is. And anybody that thinks that was a breakup has either never been in a relationship before or has been in really toxic, bad relationships. Like, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, no, that's my take too. Like, there's so many takes. I say to my friend that I watch it so often, I'm like, you ever look at someone's take and you're like, boy, like, you've clearly either never been in a relationship or only in bad ones.
Like, are you okay?
Like, are you okay? Like, you ever hear someone's take and you're like, do you need help?
Yeah.
Like, what? That's not how that works at all. Or like, that's not how that's supposed to go at all. Do you think that's normal?
No.
I feel sorry for you.
A breakup doesn't end with someone walking away and the other person being hurt and both of them being hurt and him just saying like something passive like that. That's not how a breakup works. A breakup is very much so this is over? Yeah, this is over. Are you done? Are we done? Is this over? That kind of thing. You have to, and I don't know if that's like a Hollywood's favorite thing to do these days or something because they don't understand how characters break up anymore. I don't know. Because the way that Styles and Malia in Teen Wolf, quote unquote, broke up was very similar in that way. And that makes a little bit of sense because she's a coyote who just turned into a human more recently, and their kind of relationship was very sporadic from the start, but still, they didn't actually say words. She gets out of the car and walks away, and they don't actually address it. But that's not, I don't think that was even remotely intentional by the Duffers, because the Duffers, unlike Jeff Davis, who's the writer for one of the main writer and creator of Teen Wolf, the Duffers don't hold your hands with this kind of stuff. If they were going to break up, it would be, I dump your ass. It would be that.
Exactly. It would be very clear. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Plus, I mean, like when they're at Murray's, I think it's either Jonathan or Nancy. It's like, I think he says, oh, she has a boyfriend. Yeah. And he asks for his name. He goes, Steve. Like, I'm with Steve. I love Steve. And he's like, oh, we like Steve, but we don't love Steve. Like they have that whole conversation. And yeah, like I agree. To me, it's very clear that like they are still together at that point.
Yeah,
Everyone
you can see
acknowledges.
in the way that Nancy handles that moment with Murray that she is of the mindset that she's still with Steve. There's no question about it. That and her and Steve aren't over. She's gone on this trip to resolve things about Barb, but her and Steve will just pick back up tomorrow, day after tomorrow, whatever. They'll figure it out. It is very much, and whether or not it was, I don't know a lot of other people's mindsets. I know people are wrong, but whether or not they see it as a breakup in the moment that it happens, she has 100% been emotionally cheating on him. It would be, she's been cheating on him since season 1. Very much then. That I waited for you to come back, and Jonathan says, yeah, but you only like waited a month.
That line makes me want to scream, honestly.
I want to punch him in the face the moment he says it. I hate it.
What were you expecting? Also, like, it would have taken him 5 seconds to pick up the phone and be like, hey, I need to be here for Will, so I might not be present for a while. And she would have been like, okay.
He doesn't even need to pick up the phone. They go to school together. They walk by each other all the time. Like, I'm like, not only that, the part where they're walking down the hall, talking to each other, like very clearly he is in their life. And this is after she's together with Steve. So if they're talking like this after she's been together with Steve for an extended period of time, what the hell was happening in that month? I don't care if stuff's going on with Will. I doubt you weren't going to school.
No, yeah, exactly. Like, I know.
And it's such a horrible thing to say to a girl. Like, you are just as responsible for your feelings. Yes, maybe you were there for Will, but you know what? Her best friend died. So, what the hell, Jonathan?
Yeah.
What kind of line
100%.
is that?
And the fact that, like, it's just like, oh, I waited for a month. Oh, like, what? Was he expecting her to wait around forever without him ever saying anything?
Yeah, a month is a long time to go, especially for teenagers. A month is like forever. To be sitting there waiting, like, say something, talk to me. And I imagine that month, she was not with Steve. She wasn't with anyone.
Oh, yeah, they made that pretty clear, I think.
Which means she was completely alone. No best friend, no friend at all. Just her in school. That is it. That is a long time to be alone waiting for someone.
Yeah, no, it's incredibly unfair to her, and something I really hope they are going to address in season 5. I don't know if they will.
I don't think they will. But I think they've buried that one, which is very unfortunate.
No, well, that, but also the fact that Jonathan, this is what I hope they address. Yeah, because I agree. I feel like, yeah, probably not. Unless it's like when Jonathan and Nancy find you break up and she like loses it on his ass and just goes apeshit. I can see her making a comment. But what I'm hoping they will address is something I realized recently is that throughout the previous seasons, from season 1, like from the beginning, anytime Jonathan fucks up and does something horrible or like either illegal or just straight up horrible, he uses Will as an excuse, and Will has no idea he's doing that.
Ooh.
Yeah. And neither does Joyce. So I'm hoping that like when it all comes out, like at some point, I feel like once it all comes out, Will and Joyce have to become aware he's been doing that, because at some point I feel like the natural question from either of them is going to be, well, what the hell did you apologize? What the hell did you say when this came up?
Yeah.
And he's gonna have to cop to that, or he's not gonna say it, and Will and Joyce are gonna they're gonna Will's gonna go to the rest of the party and everybody else and be like, or to Nancy or Steve and be like, what the hell did he say? And it's going to come out, and I really want to see Will and Joyce's reaction to that, because they've established Will as a sensitive kid. He's a sweetheart. He loves his best friend and his sister so much. He's willing to give up his own happiness for them.
Yeah.
And they don't
and you
even
see
realize
it's breaking his heart, and he still doesn't bring up his feelings to them. Even when he has the chance to, twice, he doesn't do it. I do find, I almost wonder if they would bring up something like that, because you do have, in hindsight, because I had never thought of that myself, of Jonathan using Will as the excuse. The one time, at least as far as I can think of in this moment, that he doesn't use Will as an excuse is season 4. He owns up to, yeah, I've been high. That's been my problem. That's me dealing with my own thing. And it's
but to Will.
But to Will, but he also in the same moment, he's still using someone else as an excuse instead of himself. So it's very interesting that he does that. Not once does he say, I've been avoiding Nancy. He's just been saying, like, he says it in this very passive way that is more about like, that's my problem, my kind of thing. Like, it's very interesting. I'd be curious to see if they bring it up. I don't think they will, only because I think they've just assassinated Jonathan's character so much at this point that I'm not sure he has much of a character left. And I'm kind of curious what could possibly be salvaged at this point. It really is a shame. I expected a lot more from him after season 1, and he has just been put on the sidelines time and time again. And it doesn't help that the one season where he is actually active and doing stuff and really more of a main character, they killed his character in episode 2 by having him take photos of Steve and Nancy. So it's really unfortunate that the one season he should shine, and he's doing shit like that. Like, what?
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen this, but I don't think people have talked about this on the server. Basically, the theory, and I agree with this, that like we know from the casting calls that they did like a countrywide casting call for Jonathan. He was supposed to be the main kind of heartthrob out of the teens.
Yeah,
and
the underdog, the big deal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that, Steve was supposed to be the jerky boyfriend who dies in the first season. And as the minute they decided to change that, Jonathan's character became obsolete because he no longer serves a purpose past season 1, but they've introduced him as Jonathan's brother. So he continues to exist, but there's nowhere, like the minute they gave the redemption arc meant for Lonnie to Steve, killed Barb instead of Steve, the minute that got transferred, Jonathan no longer has a point, and he doesn't have a point. And not only that, but like his purpose in season 1 was focused around his family, right? He's very much about his mom, his brother. And the further Will's plot gets away from Jonathan, the less Jonathan has any kind of purpose. He's been piggybacking on Nancy for a really long time, and it's very clear that Nancy stands on her own extremely well, and there's not really a point for him. It's very clear that they don't have any like direction there, and I don't blame them. They know what to do with Jonathan, quite frankly.
I don't blame them either, because what would you do, right?
How do you come back from that? You don't.
Steve not only fits that role that he was supposed to be put in, but he fits it well. People love him. His Joe Keery's just he's off the charts at this point, really. Like, it's very hard to compare the two. It's like comparing an apple to a rotten piece of meat. Like, it's not
it's not apples and oranges. Yeah.
It's not at all. And it sucks because characters, especially characters that are intended to be main characters, that end up getting sidelined like that, it's a shame. You normally see kind of the opposite sort of happen, right? Like you have like a Spike from Buffy, who was intended to be like a one-time kind of villain, and then he dies at the end, but then they end up bringing him back because James Marster is so charismatic. But it works because they took Angel and they were like, here's your own show. And they can't do that with Jonathan, because Jonathan doesn't have anything, right? Like Angel he's a vampire who's existed for an extremely long time, who has a soul. Like, he already has so much rich plot within the first episode of Buffy, and Jonathan has none of that. His plot has been built around the people around him, and none of those people need him now. He doesn't have anything for himself.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I'm kind of hoping along with that they are going to address that in season 5. Because, like, again, Joyce, like, Will specifically has been his excuse, but even in season 4, he's like, I can't leave my family. And I think it's interesting, he only mentions Will and Joyce. He doesn't mention Elle, but that's an entire other side point I could get into, which we're not getting into.
He could be considering Elle part of his family, too.
Yeah.
But who really knows?
Yeah.
He does mention having some kind of goal, though. They have some kind of plan there, clearly, because he mentions going to school with Argyle. So that's something, which is better than nothing.
Absolutely.
It's more than what he's had.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think that, like, his excuse has been Will, and his entire thing is about, I have to look after and help my mom and take care of Will. But I would really be interested to see Will and Joyce's reaction when the truth comes out, because to me, their natural reaction would be, I mean, yes, Joyce definitely leaned on him when Will was younger, but after, they get him back from the Upside Down and things stabilize and Hopper comes into their lives.
Clearly they don't need Jonathan. I mean, it's very, Joyce is doing her own thing. They don't really, they don't give you a lot of what Jonathan has been up to in season 4. Does he have a job? I don't think they ever address that at all. Argyle has a job. His best friend has a job, but Jonathan is doing exactly what? Getting high all the time, doing exactly
hitting
nothing.
golf balls at cars. Like, have you seen that Tumblr post? It's like, who would have been in charge? Steve checks notes. Jonathan has been hitting golf balls at cars?
Yeah, like, and he's not doing anything. It's very clear that Will doesn't need him because, Will's dealing with his own issues, but he's not going to Jonathan about those issues. So clearly he doesn't feel like he can go to Jonathan about that kind of problem. So if he's not going to him, then Jonathan's not conveying my family needs me very well. So he's not being utilized in any way, shape, or form. And he hasn't been utilized in that way by his family for quite some time. And not only that, but in the times where they might have needed him the most, that is going to change in season 5. Because if Joyce needed you, sorry, she doesn't anymore. Hopper's here. Hopper's back. And they're going to be doing their own thing. And Will is now around all of his friends again. So clearly he doesn't really need you. Like, maybe he'll come and talk to him again about, like, his feelings for Mike and that kind of thing. Maybe. But even then, he could totally go to somebody else completely. He could go to Nancy. He could go to Robin, who maybe him and Robin realize they're, very similar in that way.
Yeah, I want to see them have a scene, honestly.
I'd love to see that, for them to understand that they have that similarity in a way that's not similar at all. But I love that kind of relationship, right? Like, they don't like the opposite gender and they both get it and they're both in this kind of same boat. I'd love that. So it's clear that he's not going to need Jonathan, and Nancy didn't need Jonathan all season, so she didn't even have him.
Absolutely not. And even Joyce, like, I feel like all the other characters stand on their own. You know what I mean? Like, if Jonathan was in a coma, it doesn't actually change the rest. Do you know what I mean?
It doesn't. Yeah, it really doesn't.
Driving people around. I mean, but someone else could have driven the car.
No,
you know what I mean?
They might not have even taken a car. They could have been taking, like, buses or hot wiring.
Bicycle. I mean, they bike for most of the first and second season.
Yeah, so they could have done any number of things, or not even left California, because it's very clear that once they get Elle, they don't really. Well, I guess they would have left California to go to the Nina Project stuff, but they wouldn't have really needed much of anything else outside of that. They mentioned the bathtub and they're solving problems, but there's a lot of ways they could have solved the problems anyway. Break into some random high school. They know where these kind of things are if they needed them. Jonathan is very much just a floating subject of the whole thing. He's not contributing anything. Like, scene where they're in the other pizza place and he mentions the Palm Tree Delight. That could have easily been Argyle. I mean, Argyle probably would have figured that conversation out. I mean, granted, if he was there, if it was the kids, they would have handled that whole scene completely differently, but they wouldn't have needed him. There's no moment in the season where Jonathan is needed. And it's such a shame.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And this is the last point I'll make on this, then we'll get back to Stancy. But I watched season for volume 1, my friend and I watched together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like my house and her house. But then for volume 2, she was in the States Her mom's American, so she was in the States visiting her grandparents on this big long trip. And so we were communicating, like we'd have planned to like watch together, but then she was doing something with her grandparents, and so but then she'd heard something about Eddie, so then she wanted to watch. Anyway, we were communicating over the phone or over video, like talking afterwards, because she was there for a while afterwards. And she called me after she finished volume 2, like we both finished the same day, and she's like, she was so angry that she was like, first of all, Eddie's death was senseless. Second of all, she's like, why the hell wasn't Steve at the cabin? Why was Jonathan there? Jonathan did nothing. Steve was so much more important, was so much more integral to the overall plot of the entire season. What the hell was Jonathan doing there? He did nothing all season. Like, she's not even a big Stancy. And she was like, why wasn't Steve? Everybody should have convened at the cabin. Jonathan did nothing this season. Jonathan did nothing. Like, she was so mad. And I'm like, I'm right there with you. And to top it off, I think you mentioned this earlier, but the fact that the scene where he talks to Will at the pizzeria and the wasn't even in the script originally, and I think you said that the
it was
forehead
Charlie's
kiss wasn't
idea.
either?
Which one?
You were saying something about the forehead kiss with Nancy at the end or something?
Yes, that was all Charlie's idea. Yep, both of those.
Yeah. So like I said that to a friend, and this other friend, and I was like, yes, which means that like Jonathan was even more useless than in the original script. My friend was like, oh my god.
Yeah, the two big scenes, I believe Charlie, when he read the script for the scene for, like just looking in the rearview mirror at Will, he went to the Duffers and was like, that's not enough. No, there needs to be a scene between them two. And they added it in. And the forehead kiss, as far as I know, was completely ad lib, improv, completely just done in the moment. And they decided to keep it. So yeah, the two Jonathan moments that stand out the most are not something that the Duffers cared to have planned.
Yeah, and that to me is the kind of nail in the coffin when people are like, I honestly don't understand people when they're like, they can work it out. And I'm like, they didn't even plan for that to be him to have any sort of meaningful emotional moment with another character. And that season was hella long, so many hours. They did not plan for a single one of those moments. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know, I don't know what does. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anyway, getting back to season 3. Did you still ship Stancy in season 3, or did you think that ship had sailed for good?
I mean, a little bit of both. I shipped it hard from the start. I've always shipped them. I loved their relationship, their connection. I love that first love kind of feeling. I love all of it. So season 3, I kind of realized, okay, they're not going to go with this ship anymore. It's a shame. I still love them. And it's funny, that question, because I've stayed away from the fandom for an extended period of time. The two top ships in the fandom are the exact reason why I stay away from this fandom as much as I have. And I remember when I watched season 2, I decided to like go on AO3 and kind of check out, what kind of fics were being written at the time. And I saw the number 1 and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Great. Not interested at all. So I didn't do anything as part of the fandom whatsoever. I stayed on the outside of it as far away as possible because I didn't want to be a part of that at all. I got a very little idea of it, but I didn't make GIFs. I didn't make a Tumblr dedicated to it. I didn't write fanfics. I didn't join any servers or look at forums for them. I was not interested. It wasn't until kind of after pandemic and I think 2021 where I was finally like, I miss Stranger Things. It was a great show. I miss the ships and fandom, and the fandom wasn't great at the time, but maybe it's changed and matured a little bit and people have grown up. They haven't. But man, Stancy hit me hard all over again. I rewatched the show and I was like, God, I really love them. Like, they are so adorable. And they just hit me like a truck. And I believe around Christmas time last year, so before this previous Christmas, I just fell into Stancy hell. I wrote so many fics. I started drawing them, jiffing them. I was just making everything I possibly could because they were just in my brain. I'd go to sleep at night thinking about how I'd want that ship. If there was anything that season 4 could give me that would like reignite my passion for the show, even though it was already obviously happening internally myself. Like, I was already in to a dead ship as far as I was concerned. And they gave it to me in spades. So I had fully accepted that maybe we'd get one interaction from them. That'd be it. And it's kind of that, like, yeah, they used to be like together, kind of forlorn, lost love kind of thing. You know, that's 100% what I expected. You know, exes that can at least now be civil with each other kind of thing. Cool, man. But yeah, it's both for me.
Yeah, I have to agree. I loved them so much in the first 2 seasons, and then we got to season 3, and I was like, all right, R.I.P. And I really shipped Steve and Robin together hard.
It's a cute ship. I mean, I get it. I ship Robin as well, a non-platonic. I don't care. I mean, everybody in the show is bisexual as far as I'm concerned. So Robin is included in that. And I get it. They're adorable together. And they're two halves of a whole very much. They fit each other really well. So I get it.
Yeah, and so like obviously my friend I watched had seen everything up to the end of season 3. And so we get there, and I remember us watching it, and I was like, oh, he's asking her, this is great. And then it was coming up to me, and I was like, we finished that episode. I looked at her and I was like, I'm all for representation, but now I feel bad for Steve, and I feel bad for both of them because now they both can't have somebody. I want them to find happiness. Aww.
I love that scene, though. I mean, as far as complications go, you can definitely tell both of them are trying not to hurt each other, right? Steve doesn't want to push his feelings or what he's dealing with in that moment onto her and make it about him. And he knows that she's hurting, and she knows that she could break him if she said anything wrong. And they're both being very gentle and very careful with each other because they know how serious that moment is. It's a great scene that we honestly never would have had, and I love it. I mean, I'm all for it. It's a beautiful scene, but yeah, it was polarizing at the time when it happened because there were already stop and fix all over the place, and I'm the same, right? I want representation too, but I literally mean it. Everybody is bisexual to me. It's a fanfic world for me. Like, I'll make them however I want to make them. If Robin and Steve are together, yes they are. If Steve and Jonathan are together, yes they are. I don't really care. I'm gonna take that playground that the Duffers have given to me, and I'm going to play in it. I'm going to grab the shovels. I'm going to grab the dump truck. I'm going to grab like everything and just have as much fun with it as I possibly can. Robin is no different.
Yeah, no, I hear that. And I do want to say I love that scene. I think it was a bit of a shock just because that was the original plan.
Yeah.
But I absolutely love that scene. The acting is phenomenal. Yeah, it's so great. It's such a wonderful scene between those two characters. And they build so well on that. So beautifully in season 4 too, because as funny as it is, like the whole scene in the car when it's like it's boobies, like the fact that they can both have that relationship with another person, especially, I mean, that kind of dynamic is so much more common these days, but back in the 80s that would have been so rare.
Yeah, very rare, very unique. Yeah, one of a kind.
So I just love that. And my feeling coming into, like I said before, my feeling coming into season 4 was I really want both Steve and Robin to find love. I was expecting, and for Robin, we got the love interest storyline I was hoping for. For Steve, I was expecting they were going to introduce another love interest. So I was like happily surprised when they brought Stancy back.
Yeah, very surprised. And I love an exes to lovers kind of thing too. It's such I mean, people harp on it a lot, but that is a kind of cliche trope kind of thing for a reason, because people still will have feelings for people. And I love those feelings returning, but in a different way. And does that make it weaker? No, I don't think so. In fact, I think it makes it stronger. They have history. They have an understanding that is unlike anything that other people would possibly have. They saw each other when they thought they were their worst, and they've become better over that time. And they have this newfound respect and understanding that is unlike anything you'd get with, I don't know, Jessica, new character, OG, I guess. And I like it. I don't know that they would have been able to top Nancy in any way with a new female character. I don't think it would have been handled well. There's not a lot of other characters in their age range that would make sense because none of them exist. Every character that she listed off in like the bed episode in episode 1 are throwaway characters. There aren't a lot of characters their age that have even been alluded to other than maybe Tina. So bringing up any character would have been It's hard, right? It's hard to, especially for Steve. He's the fan favorite. He's the biggest character in the show. He's Joe Keery. And if they're going to bring an actual love interest in for him, it's got to be someone who is important to us as well. It's got to be a big character. It's got to be a big deal. It makes sense for it to be Nancy.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I wasn't sure what they were going to do, but you're right. I mean, and just in terms of timeline, you think about, I think, Tina or Nicole, or like any of his other, characters we briefly see mentioned or seen.
Carol. Oh, good
Cammerel,
God.
like, in the first couple of seasons. But because of the timeline, the rest of those characters, as far as we know, graduated and went to college. So they're not even around.
Yeah, they've moved on.
That doesn't make sense. And Steven even alludes to that. He says, to Robin, it doesn't make sense. That so-and-so, they're at college. They're back for spring break. This makes no sense about Vicky. And he turns out to be right. I agree. I think in retrospect, it's like, yeah, it has to be an equally big character who stands on their own. And the only person in Steve's age range that makes sense, that was his big love, was and is Nancy.
Yep.
So I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, again, pleasantly surprised, I think, is how I think most of us, if not all of us, feel about, those of us that love Stancy feel about that.
I was very pleasantly surprised. Every interaction between them for the very, very first good few, I kept thinking, okay, this is the only interaction. This is most we're going to get. And then the conversation happens with Dustin. And I'm like, wait a second. What are we doing here? And then the conversation happens with Robin and Nancy. And I'm like, what's going on? And then it just keeps building and building and building and building. And I'm like, are we doing this? Are we doing this? Because I'm here. I'm game. I'm ready. Let's go. I'm here. So like the fire was dwindled, but the embers still, they're capable of just lighting right back up.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think because I left things open-ended with like their fight, their breakup, the end of the snowball at the end, because they left that all open-ended, no closure.
And even not just that, even if you take season 2, if you're really gonna like cherry pick scenes, because I have to. There's Steve saving Nancy with the car. There's her being jealous of Robin and being like, who are you? There's like little tiny glimmers that obviously there's something still happening in the background. The scene where Will is talking to Joyce, and in the background you can literally see Steve walk right up to the ambulance that Jonathan and Nancy are sitting in and start talking to them. So even if it's not like right out in your face, because God, the Duffers don't want to hold your hand. Fuck your hand. They want to just see what you get, see what you glean, see what you figure out on your own. And I think they have a lot of fun with seeing what people theorize, honestly. Yeah, but I was there. I was looking at every single one of those moments, when Steve hits the car and everything spins around and he's sitting there like, what did I just do? And everything. He wasn't thinking about it at all. You don't get to see what's going through his mind as he speeds up and hits that car. Because anyone going through that is probably thinking, this is not going to end well for me, but I'm going to save her. That's what matters. He's not thinking at all, because Steve doesn't think. He just acts. He is very adaptive, and he's just going off, the skin. He's just doing what he does best. It is completely unhindered. He's not thinking about himself at all, or Robin for that fact. But it's these little things.
It's not until the car stops that he's like, are you okay?
Are you okay?
And she's like, ask me tomorrow. I love that Steve's a man of action, but even back in season 1, when he shows up at Jonathan's and he's like, I screwed up. And then he's like, hey, what happened to your hand?
What happened to your hand?
He's a man of action, and then he realizes something is wrong, or when the adrenaline dies down, he goes, are you okay? He'll check back in as soon as it dies down.
He immediately shifts. He's like a chameleon, right? He kind of immediately shifts to what is needed in that moment. He's really great at it. And I can't imagine what he was going through in that moment, but there's a lot of Stancy in season 3, even as far as them, the are you in love with Nancy and him saying no. People say oh, but he was on the true stuff. Was he though? Or did he just admit it because he just wanted to? There's literally no proof that it's still affecting him. Could it still be affecting Robin? Right. True. It could be. Is it? Do we know that for sure? Or would she just have admitted what she admitted at the moment, just willy-nilly because she's Robin? and she doesn't really have a filter. Like, people say that, but duffers aren't going to hand you that and literally make it be a fact. They're going to throw this thing at you and see what you get from it. And that's kind of, between you. And that's it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, and even Robin alludes to that. She's like, I think he's not thinking clearly. And he's like, I think he's thinking clearer than he has in a long time. That, like, the drugs have basically worn off at that point. Like, they're still a little giddy when they start hysterically laughing. But, like, the drugs have started to wear off at that point, and they're talking frankly. And, I mean, he's literally about to tell Robin how he feels. So it makes sense that you saying, like, yes, I've been in love, I'm capable of being in love, but I'm not in love anymore because I found somebody that's a better fit for me, because he thinks at that point he has a chance with Robin.
But you also see his face when she says, are you still in love with Nancy? He makes this face that, no, no, I'm not. It's very much the, kind of denial, very much. And if you look at him for even 2 seconds, I mean, you can hear his voice all you want, but if you're actually looking at his face, it's very clear that it's not the truth.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think also people have pointed this out, but that in retrospect, the fact that we don't see Nancy or Steve interact at all until right at the end of the season and only in a group setting speaks volumes.
Yeah,
because
they definitely had it planned. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because, like, I mean, again, you break up with somebody, generally speaking, you don't continue to hang out with them. But on the flip side, Nancy and Jonathan had feelings for each other, and they continue to be friends and hang out for all of season 1 and 2. And Steve's obviously bothered by that, but he accepts it and he supports that to be there for Nancy. So, like, the fact that as soon as Steve and Nancy break up for real, that they just stop interacting, at least in big ways, I think is very telling. Because, like, as people have said, their relationship was always a romantic one. So the fact that they stop interacting whatsoever, and then they only start interacting again when Jonathan is like makes a choice not to show up, is very telling.
Very much. Yeah.
Yeah. It's about what you see, but also what you don't see. In retrospect, it's what did we not see that season,
Exactly. And the little bit of what you do see, you kind of have to pay attention to, like Nancy asking who Robin is. You missed it if you blink. You don't even realize that because that scene is so quick and so fast, shot for shot for shot, as characters are answering other characters' questions about other characters' questions. There's like you flipped a car with your mind, and Steve's like, yeah, she's like, she has powers, like get with the program, and they're like just moving. If you blink for a second, you miss Nancy being even remotely confused about who Robin is at all and how she interacts with her, even in the slightest. It is literally a blink and you miss it kind of moment. And they are quick with those kind of things, because if you're not looking hard enough, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I love that they I think there's a parallel to how Elle doesn't like Max to begin with, and then they become best friends. Same thing.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, with Robin and Nancy, as soon as she realizes, oh, like, I don't need to feel threatened by this person. Her and Steve are not a thing. They're never going to be a thing. We can be friends. She immediately opens up to her. Robin pushes, but she opens up and she's like, oh, this is a person that Steve loves and trusts, and clearly they're good friends. And I don't know if I assume in Nancy's mind, she must be assuming that Robin likes somebody else, because I think to her mind, given what she knows, she must assume that, because otherwise, I feel like from her perspective, she'd be like, well, she'd be insane not to date Steve. So in her mind, she must think, oh, okay, she's dating somebody else and she doesn't want to tell her, or she's she likes somebody else.
Not only that, but the other question goes, is it possible for Steve to have friends that are girls? I don't think Nancy has never seen that. Literally all of the girls that she lists that know Steve, the only one that knows Steve that is not in any way romantic or sexually involved with him is Carol, because she has a boyfriend. So it would make sense for her not to be able to understand that they're friends until getting to know them a little bit more, and Robin pushing on it a little bit, and Steve even saying, like, should tell you we're just friends, and Robin just being like, platonic with a capital P. Like, so it's slowly absorbing into her head, oh, that maybe they actually are just friends. Maybe it's not anything serious. But that's also after almost a year of just assuming that they're together. So, and that they've been
Yeah.
together that whole time. It's a hard thing to absorb and accept. And Nancy's not the kind, she's not like Steve. She doesn't take seconds to absorb information and move on. She takes a really long time because she's looking at it from every side, every angle, every corner. She's looking for the flaws, every little tiny detail. She takes time with that kind of stuff to accept and absorb information. She's also very quick to, put her walls up and not trust what she's hearing or seeing. So it makes sense that she's apprehensive about it, but she realizes it, and it takes her a little bit, but she definitely gets there where she's like, okay, she's not a threat, and she's an interesting person. I want to get to know her a little bit more.
Yeah, and I love that, and I love that kind
Yeah.
of setup for season 5 too, because I mean,
Me
to
too.
me, it's I think the natural progression of that is eventually either Nancy being the perceptive person that she is either going to pick up on the fact, like I assume that once that like now that like they've set up Vicky and Robin, I assume that Steve is going to start driving both of them to school because that
Yeah.
just makes sense.
That's cute.
And so they can make out in the back seat or whatever. Like Steve seems like the kind of guy who's like, all right, we're gonna tint the windows. You guys just get down really low.
He's a great wingman. He's got them covered. He's like, we could put up some curtains or something,
load them in the car, like
pretends like they're little rock stars in the back seat or whatever, celebrities. He's like, it's okay, I got you. I could take care of this. I'll just get some shades for Mom. We're gonna go.
Yeah, exactly.
Great wingman.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I'm kind of picturing for season 5 is either like, he's driving them to school. Obviously, Nancy's driving Mike, and either she sees him from afar and it's like, oh, who is that? It's like, oh, that's Robin's friend Vicky, or I think they're in band together, or like something. Like she's talking to Mike, and she kind of looks at them, and either maybe she picks up on something, or maybe after her and Steve, have talked more or heard Jonathan broken up, whatever. She kind of picks up on something, or she remembers something, and she's like, you see one of those moments of realization where she realizes like I've been cold and jealous towards this person and they're not even into the same gender I'm into. I should go, Nancy seems like to me the kind of person who would immediately like, A, I think she'd be accepting, and B, I think she'd be the kind of person who'd be like would be offering to be like, hey, let's all go shopping, or like, I'm sorry I've been so cold, like let's all go shopping. Let's, I feel like I should apologize. Or like maybe after her and Steve get back together, like that's kind of what I'm picturing. Either that or something comes up in conversation, or
I would love her, like if they say Nancy and Robin had continued to, because she's obviously excited about possibly having a new friend. I love the idea that they've been around each other in each other's orbit a little bit, and maybe she gets to the point where she's like, why aren't you and Steve together? Like, obviously you like him, you two get along, like you guys are great friends, like, and she's kind of doing a little bit of the check for Robin and being like, what's up? But also she's kind of, testing the waters to see how much of a maybe chance she has with getting back with Steve. Just kind of, just checking in. And
doing the vibe check,
doing the vibe check and just kind of, testing the waters, being like, so why aren't you two together? Like, what's going on? And I'd like to think maybe in that moment, Robin is at the point where, okay, me and Nancy, we've been getting along really well. And she would probably be really open-minded. Maybe it's okay to tell somebody else, and actually genuinely confides in her and lets her know right then and there, like, well, because like, I don't like the kind of people like Steve, like, what, and Nancy being like, what kind of people is that? Like, guys,
I'm picturing either that or like I agree. Like I think because they're both, at school together, I imagine that they're gonna keep hanging out and keep, continuing to be friends. Eating lunch together. 'Cause the other thing is we see her in the newsroom. We don't see her like she doesn't eat lunch. Like we don't see her eating lunch with everybody else. So I'm kind of hoping we're going to kind of see more of that. Because obviously Nancy is hiding in her work very clearly when season 4 picks up. But I'm kind of picturing a scene where either they're out shopping, maybe, or maybe they're hanging out at Nancy's place. Robin says something, feels that she can confide in her and says something like, well, my friend Vicky? And it's like, yeah. It's like, well, we're not actually friends. And they're like, oh my God, did you guys have a falling out? And she's like, no. Like,
No, I don't mean it like that.
we're not friends the way that you and Steve are not friends. And she's like, oh, that explains a lot. Yeah.
It reminds me of that. There's like a Facebook meme thing where it's like, me and character B are breaking up, and then character A is like, well, that's a horrible way to say that we're getting married. It's kind of like that thing.
Yeah. That. Or have you seen, it's an old one, but it's like a Facebook meme about like somebody's like, oh, so wonderful that, this, my daughter like has been friends or roommates for this person for all these years. And, that, it's so like how wonderful, friendship is so wonderful. And somebody in the comments is like, I hate to break this to you, but they're together. They're lesbians. Like,
Yeah.
it's like she brings her to Thanksgiving. They've been roommates and friends since since university. Like that is not their friend. That is their partner.
100%.
So I'm also picturing something like that, which could be really cool. And I'd love to kind of in kind of my dream list of kind of where, epilogue or just kind of maybe things kind of sprinkled throughout season 5 is that, once Steve and Nancy get back together and, we see kind of Vicky and Robin dating, is that like they can go on like double dates at some point, which I think would be super cute.
Yeah.
And then like, I'm imagining Steve's parents are probably somewhere on a business trip or something, so they can all go back to the house, or he's having dinner parties. Like I'm picturing those kinds of things,
Yeah. Or they can just be themselves, and Vicky and Robin don't have to worry about anybody judging them, because yes, Steve and Nancy are both a boy and a girl in a relationship, but that doesn't make any difference because they're both already very open and accepting of the whole thing in the first place. They can actually be themselves around other people.
Yeah, and I like to picture Nancy the kind of person, like I've talked about this on Tumblr, but the kind of person who I think once finding out would be the kind of person who like links arms with them, and it's like,
Oh yeah,
if there's 3 of us, we're a bunch of girlfriends hanging out. If it's the 2 of you, everyone's gonna stare, but I'm gonna put myself on this side, and that way no one bothers us.
and they think we're all just good friends. Yep.
Yeah, and I could definitely see Nancy being the kind of person to be like, okay, just to kind of cover for them.
Totally comfortable being the third wheel, as long as it means that her friends aren't being judged and stared at by other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in the person that Steve has evolved to be, I think that's something that is definitely very attractive about Nancy. You see that kind of in some of his other dates and stuff at the beginning of season 4, like when he's talking to Robin, or when he's with, I think it's Brenda at the championship game, that like there's kind of an out of syncness. It's very vapid, it's very surface level, and he's really looking for somebody who's...
He says it. He says he doesn't want to just have meaningless sex. He wants an actual relationship. It's very clear that like he's not getting what he needs from any of the relationships that he's in. And he knows it, but he can't stop himself from wanting to look for that, something to fill that void in his soul that Nancy left behind after.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think,
become very monogamous, this poor boy.
Very monogamous.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not the character that we saw in season 1. And I think that's both Nancy and Robin's doing, that he wants a more meaningful, deep connection with somebody who's, intelligent, caring, kind of like he says repeatedly to Tommy and Carol that like what he loves about Nancy so much is that she's kind and caring and cares about other people. And
I love that too, and it shows a lot in his relationships, because he has a great strong relationship with Dustin and Robin. He's very close to them. He's not at all close to his parents, so obviously he's wanting something, his person. He's seeing Robin being in love with Vicky, and he's like, that's your person. She's definitely going to be your person. And he sees Dustin with Susie, and he probably is thinking, that's your person. And he's like, but I need my person too. And it can't be Heidi. It's definitely not going to be Laura. Like, it's not working out with these girls. I need something actually serious, and nobody takes me serious. Like, what the heck?
And that's our show. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe and tell your friends. Our theme music is provided by Neon Knights. Thank you for listening to this episode of Ham Radio, a Stranger Things podcast. Please join us next time, same dial, same time.
Over and out.